Welcome to my final design thesis presentation. My product is called Flourish. So, South Asian households often lack effective communication, and this leads to three different things, including excessive conflict, ineffective problem solving, and the lack of an emotional bond. So, these three things kind of lead to South Asian children being hesitant to talk about to talk to their parents about their mental health and how they're struggling with it. And mental health is already really stigmatized, and it's actually considered a taboo within the South Asian community. So, in terms of my users' needs, they want their household to be an environment where they feel safe and comfortable and encouraged to be able to talk about anything they want to talk about. And they want to feel comfortable when they're initiating the conversation. And most importantly, they want to feel heard and validated by their parents with regards to their mental health. The problem statement that I came up with to help me figure out a solution was having we create a solution that utilizes empathy and allows South Asian teenagers who require support for their mental health to have a conversation with their parents, and which results in them feeling validated and allows them to get the support that they require. Obviously, this was not a linear process whatsoever. So, starting with my secondary research from both semesters, I found the reason for the lack of effective communication is the discrepancy in acculturative status between immigrant parents and their children. And this is basically defined as what's known as an acculturation gap. And this leads to problematic distancing that occurs between the parent and the child. And in South Asian culture, suppression of emotion is really ingrained within our culture. So somatization is something that occurs very often, and this just means that South Asians will express their psychological distress through the body rather than the mind, because it's seen as more socially acceptable. And mental health can also be seen as a figment of people's imagination. Moving into the primary research, some of the key things I found was how South Asian culture pushes for collectivism and Western culture pushes for individualism, which causes cultural clash, and it's really hard to balance both cultures. And Asian American children are taught to uphold their family's positive image, so they might suffer in silence for extended amounts of time. And another big mindset that South Asians have is, what are other people going to think of us if this happens or if that happens? And this fear of shame plays a really huge challenge in opening about mental health care. So, moving into the how, I conducted a co creation workshop. I basically conducted with three users and I got them to do a round of crazy eights, and they came up with a bunch of amazing solutions and ideas. So, my goal was to take all of the ideas I got and built it into one main solution, which is what I had down here. So, here I wanted to include catastrophizing as a part of my solution, choosing your own adventure conversation map, and make it a solution that's actually for South Asians as a target audience. So for my first user test, I used the Wizard of Oz testing where be able to test the text-based conversation that users would have with the AI chatbot. I didn't really get a lot of feedback just because users did state that the solution was really well thought out and they wouldn't change anything. And I think this was just because of the co-creation workshop that I did. And because the solution came directly from the users, it made it really foolproof. The only two things I discovered were to add an option to be able to send voice messages between the AI chatbot and the user themselves, and also add a settings page where the user is able to change the language that the AI communicates to you in the scenario that your parents want to use it as well, because oftentimes immigrant parents have the language barrier that exists. I didn't get around to including these two features, but it's something that I hope to do in the future. So for my second user test, I intentionally tested with students who were not keeping up with my project and were not South Asian, because I felt that they would have a fresh pair of eyes to be able to judge my project with. So pieces of feedback I received were the community page, which is what I had before. It didn't really scream events, so users told me to make it more evident that it was a place where users can attend events. So I did that by changing the title and changing up the layout a bit to not match with the Discover page that I had before, because the layout was exactly the same. And users also stated that I should prototype a screen that shows that the event that the user has RSVP'd for, and it's actually added to their calendar. Now moving into the solution. Do you feel that effective communication is absent within your South Asian household? What is effective communication, you ask? Well, it's being able to openly talk about anything you want with the purpose of delivering, receiving, and understanding the message successfully. Introducing Flourish, a self-help tool that is dedicated to helping South Asian teenagers feel validated when talking to their parents about their mental health. Now, we believe that knowledge is power, so on the Discover page you can learn new information, including learning about how to cope with your anxiety and even how to practice empathy with those around you. And as South Asians, we value community, so you can use the events page to encourage your parents to learn from people that they might trust in a religious setting. Introducing Flora, an AI chatbot who's ready to listen to you 24/7. Flora has been trained in cognitive behavioral therapy, which is an approach to mental health that helps to identify distortions in your thinking. Now, Flora isn't a therapist, but she can guide you to figure things out on your own. The AI chat feature also provides you with agency by giving you control over their responses. We also recognize that sometimes we do require extra help, especially because Flora isn't a therapist. So we made professional support available right at your fingertips whenever you need it. You can filter your options to suit your needs, whether you need a female therapist or a male therapist, or even hijabi or non-hijabi, or even someone that's fluent in your native language. Flourish will meet your needs no matter what.